They came to break our spirit with horror. But instead, they found comedians with guns. Humanity didn't just resist. We mocked, we memed, we laughed until the stars burned. And when they tried to silence that laughter, we weaponized it. This isn't just a war, it's the final punchline. 00 was 159. 0031 520. Speakers 0. Private First Class Reese. Shade Martinez couldn't stop laughing at the absurdity of it all. Here she was, stuck in a foxhole on some backwater moon with purple dirt, trading jokes with her squad about how the alien invasion fleet looked like angry space cucumbers. The Ziraki had expected humanity to cower in terror at their superior biotechnology. Instead, they got memes about their appearance going viral across human space. "Hey, Shade," Sergeant Kwan called out from his position, his helmet's visor reflecting the eerie green auroras dancing above them. "What do you call a Ziraki scout ship that's lost its navigational system?" Reese rolled her eyes, already grinning. "I don't know, Kwan." "What? A pickle without a sense of direction." He punctuated the punchline with a snort that crackled through their comm system. The entire squad groaned, but Reese couldn't help chuckling. The laughter helped keep the edge off, especially with the knowledge that somewhere above them, those pickles were preparing another assault. Their bio-organic ships pulsed with an unsettling rhythm against the starlit sky, like a heartbeat that refused to follow any natural rhythm. Captain Rowan's voice cut through their chatter. "Cut the comedy hour, people. Movement at Sector 7. Reese peered through her scope, the advanced optics cutting through the perpetual purple haze that hung over this god-forsaken rock. Sure enough, something was writhing its way across the crystalline plains ahead. The Ziraki's latest attempt at psychological warfare, a mass of tentacles and chitinous plates that looked like someone had thrown an octopus into a blender with a cockroach. 10 credits, says this one ends up as next week's hottest plushie design. Private Torres whispered over the squad channel. My kid sister's already got the entire murder puppy collection. Reese adjusted her grip on her rifle, the weight familiar and reassuring. The weapon's smart link display showed a full magazine of armor-piercing rounds, each one specially designed to punch through the Ziraki's supposedly superior bio-armor. I'm thinking more like a breakfast cereal mascot. Tentacle O's, now with extra crunch. A ripple of suppressed laughter ran through the squad. Even Captain Rowan's stern facade cracked slightly. Reese caught the brief shake of his shoulders through her peripheral vision. The thing in Sector 7 kept advancing, its movements becoming more purposeful. Reese's humor faded slightly as she remembered the briefing videos. These weren't just mindless bioweapons. Each one was piloted by a Ziraki warrior, merged with their creation in ways that human scientists were still trying to understand. The aliens had expected their superior evolution to break humanity's will to fight. They really should have done their homework better. "Incoming transmission," Rowan announced suddenly. "Looks like our cucumber friends want to chat." The squad's HUD displays flickered, and the aristocratic face of a Ziraki commander materialized. Its elongated features were arranged in what Reese assumed was meant to be an intimidating snarl. Though, honestly, it looked more like it had eaten something that disagreed with it. "Humans." The alien's voice resonated with artificial dignity. "Your persistence in the face of superior life forms is amusing, but surely you must see the futility of resistance. Our bio-organic weaponry evolves faster than your primitive metal tools. Surrender now, and we will ensure your species survives as a client race." Reese couldn't help herself. She keyed her mic before Rowan could stop her. "Hey, quick question. Do you guys actually pickle your young? Or is that just a fashion choice?" The Ziraki commander's face contorted in confusion, its translator obviously struggling with the concept. Before it could respond, Quan jumped in. "And do you prefer being called Your Sourness or Lord Gherkin?" The transmission cut off abruptly. The bioorganic horror in Sector 7 let out a screech that would have been terrifying if it didn't sound so much like a squeaky toy being stepped on. "Thanks for that," Rowan sighed, but Reese could hear the amusement in his voice. "Now they're really going to be pissed." "Good," Reese replied, charging her rifle with a satisfying click. "Angry enemies make mistakes. And besides..." She paused as the first rounds of artillery began to fall, lighting up the purple landscape with explosions that looked like a demented fireworks show. "Someone needs to teach them that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our guns. It's our ability to find humor in anything," Torres offered. "Nah." Reese grinned behind her visor as the ground began to shake with the approach of their mechanical nightmares. "It's our ability to turn their nightmares into jokes and then kill them with the punchline." Reese remembered exactly where she was when first contact happened, slouched in her beat-up recliner at the military barracks, nursing a lukewarm beer and watching ancient reruns of Star Trek. The irony wasn't lost on her when every screen on Earth suddenly switched to the same transmission. The Ziraki High Commander looked like what would happen if a pickle had attended drama school. Its elongated face filled the screen as it struck what Reese assumed was meant to be an imposing pose, tendrils writhing dramatically behind its translucent head. "People of Earth," it had announced, its artificially translated voice echoing with carefully crafted menace. "We are the Ziraki Dominion. Your primitive civilization has attracted our attention. We offer you one chance at survival, immediate and unconditional surrender." Reese had taken another sip of her beer, watching as her fellow Marines gathered around the common room screen. Sergeant Mills, a crusty veteran who'd seen more bar fights than battles, summed up everyone's thoughts. "Anyone else thinking this looks like that B-movie marathon from last week?" The transmission continued with what the Ziraki clearly thought was an impressive display of their bioorganic superiority. Their ships pulsed and transformed, sprouting weapons that looked like a cross between tentacles and garden hoses. Their soldiers merged with biological battlesuits that would have made H.R. Geiger proud if he'd been really into vegetables. "Your primitive projectile weapons and crude mechanical devices are no match for our evolutionarily superior technology," the High Commander continued. "Observe as we demonstrate our power on your moon surface." The camera switched to a view of the lunar surface, where one of their bioweapons proceeded to melt a small crater into the regolith. Reese had to admit, it was impressive, in the same way that a peacock was impressive. Lots of show, but you had to wonder about the practical applications. The United Earth Defense Force's response came 3 hours later, after what Reese later learned was a heated debate between military leadership and the Cultural Affairs Department. The Cultural Affairs team won. Humanity's official response began with the theme song from The Blob, followed by a masterfully edited compilation of every B-grade monster movie from the 1950s onward that featured creatures bearing an uncanny resemblance to the Ziraki. The highlights included scenes from Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, The Thing, and a particularly inspired clip from Little Shop of Horrors, showing Audrey II demanding to be fed. The compilation ended with a simple message: "Thanks for the audition tape, but we've seen this show before. P.S. Your tentacles look better in the 1960s version." The Ziraki's second transmission came within minutes. Their High Commander's face now tinted with what humans would later learn was their species' equivalent of apoplectic rage. "You dare mock the mighty Ziraki Dominion? Your insolence will be your downfall. We will reduce your cities to organic waste, convert your populations into nutrient paste, and the transmission cut off mid-rant, replaced by a TikTok video of someone's grandmother watching the first contact message and commenting, "Oh honey, you should really see a dermatologist about that complexion." The video had already gained 50 million likes. What followed was perhaps the most unique arms race in human history. While the Zraki launched increasingly threatening demonstrations of their bioweapons, humanity responded with an unprecedented fusion of military preparation and mimetic warfare. The aliens unleashed a horrifying creature they called the Spine Render. Social media dubbed it the Murder Puppy, and plushie manufacturers couldn't keep up with demand. Their dreaded Death Bloom became the inspiration for a new energy drink that promised to melt your face off with flavor. But beneath the laughter and the memes, humanity was preparing. Reese's unit was among the first to test the new reactive armor designed to counter the Zraki's biological attacks. Every viral video making fun of the aliens' appearance contained encrypted data about their weapons' capabilities. Each joke, shared on social media, carried hidden patterns that, when analyzed, revealed optimal combat strategies. The Zraki, for their part, seemed increasingly unhinged by humanity's response. Their transmissions became more frequent and less coherent. The High Commander's elegant poses gave way to gesticulating rants about human dignity and proper responses to impending doom. The breaking point came when someone, Reese strongly suspected the Cultural Affairs Department again, hacked the Zraki's next broadcast and added laugh tracks to their threats. The invasion began the next day, 6 months later, as Reese sat in her purple dirt foxhole watching the alien horrors advance. She couldn't help but appreciate the cosmic irony. The Zraki had expected to find a primitive species cowering in fear. Instead, they found humanity, a species that had spent its entire existence learning to cope with terror through humor, that had perfected the art of laughing in the face of death. "You know what the best part is?" Kwan's voice crackled over the comm as they watched more bioorganic nightmares emerge from the mist. "They still haven't figured out that while they were trying to scare us, we were studying them. Every meme, every joke, every seemingly silly response, we were gathering intel, analyzing their weaknesses." Reese chambered a round in her rifle. "Well, you know what they say. Comedy is all about timing. And timing, as the Zraki were about to learn, was something humans understood very, very well." The first wave of Zraki attacks hit New Delhi at dawn. Their bioorganic drop pods streaked through the atmosphere like falling stars, leaving trails of bioluminescent gore in their wake. Inside her combat walker, Reese watched the live feeds with the rest of her unit, waiting for deployment orders. The pods split open like rotting fruit, disgorging what the Zraki had dubbed terror incarnate. Massive chitinous creatures that looked like someone had crossbred a centipede with a garbage disposal. They advanced through the streets, acid drool melting asphalt, their screams designed to induce panic in the primitive human nervous system. Within 15 minutes, spicy millipede was trending worldwide. "They really thought this would break us." Torres's voice crackled over the comm as their dropships thundered through the stratosphere. "My abuela's cooking is scarier than these things." The Zraki's terror incarnate lasted exactly 6 hours before someone noticed they had an exploitable weakness. They were extremely sensitive to capsaicin. The battle for New Delhi ended with civilians using hot sauce as improvised weapons while uploading cooking tutorials titled, "How to Properly Season Your Alien Invader." But that was just the beginning. The aliens escalated with their Death Bloom assault on Singapore. Massive organic structures that looked like Gothic cathedrals designed by a flora-obsessed madman erupted from the ground, spewing clouds of psychotropic spores. The Zraki expected mass panic. Instead, they got amateur botanists. "Look at the structural integrity of those load-bearing tendrils," Quan marveled as their unit helped evacuate civilians. "Nature's already figured out half our engineering problems. We just need to steal their homework." Reese knew he was right. Behind the jokes and memes, the UEDF's science division was working overtime. Every viral video of civilians taunting the death blooms contained valuable data about their reaction times. Each Instagram story showing their color changes under different conditions helped map their sensory capabilities. The death bloom spores turned out to have an unexpected interaction with caffeine, causing the structures to go into anaphylactic shock. 3 days later, Death Bloom energy drink hit the market, promising to melt your face off with flavor. The promotional campaign featured real footage of the Singapore battle set to dubstep. But the Zraki's next creation, the spine render, that's when things got interesting. It looked like someone had asked an AI to combine a wolf, a spider, and several architectural violations into one creature. Its howl could shatter bones. Its claws could tear through standard armor like wet paper. And it had a disturbing habit of trying to nest in urban areas. Humanity's response? They dubbed it the murder puppy and turned it into the must-have plushie of the season. My kid sisters got the whole collection. Torres showed them pictures during a brief respite between battles. The deluxe version comes with real bone-rattling sound effects. She says it helps her sleep. Reese couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity, even as she field-stripped her rifle for the 3rd time that day. The weapon's design had already been modified 6 times, based on data gathered from social media posts about the murder puppy's weak points. Every cute video of them trying to establish nests had helped military engineers develop better urban defense systems. The Zraki grew increasingly frustrated. Their biological horrors, meant to induce primal terror, instead became social media celebrities. Their high commanders' furious broadcasts about humanity's inappropriate response to extinction-level threats became prime remix material. But beneath the laughter and memes, humanity was changing, learning, adapting. The new Mark VII combat armor incorporated biomimetic elements, reverse-engineered from captured Zraki specimens. The funny videos of murder puppies charging into buildings had led to revolutionary breakthroughs in structural engineering. Even the Death Bloom spore delivery system had inspired new medical technologies. "They still don't get it, do they?" Reese mused during a briefing, watching footage of their latest bioweapon attempting to terrorize Tokyo. Someone had already added googly eyes to the footage. "They think we're not taking them seriously." Captain Rowan nodded grimly. "That's their biggest mistake. They don't understand that this is how humanity processes threats. We laugh because we're studying them. We joke because it helps us think clearly. We make memes because each one contains patterns that, when analyzed by our AI systems, reveal their tactical weaknesses." The alien's next creation was dubbed Nope Rope. Within minutes of its appearance, a writhing mass of neural tendrils that attempted to interface with human minds and induce terror. What they hadn't counted on was humanity's long history of psychological warfare against itself. "You try to induce existential dread in a species that invented doom-scrolling." Quan laughed as they suited up for another drop. "That's like trying to drown a fish." Reese checked her helmet seals, the new bioreactive coating gleaming dully. Every piece of their equipment had been improved based on data gathered during what the media was calling the greatest galactic meme war. Each joke, Each seemingly frivolous response had been another piece of the puzzle. "They're learning, though," Rowan warned them, his voice serious despite the "Got Pickle" sticker someone had slapped on his command console. "Intel suggests they're adapting their strategies. They're starting to realize that human psychology isn't as simple as they thought." Reese chambered a round in her rifle, the action smooth and familiar. "Good," she said, watching as the drop bay doors began to open. "Let them learn. Let them finally understand that every laugh, every joke, every meme, it wasn't just coping mechanism. It was reconnaissance," Quan finished, his voice grim despite his customary grin. Above them, the purple sky was filling with more Zaraki bioships. Each one carried new horrors, new attempts to break humanity's spirit. But this time, humanity was ready. Every social media post had been a data point. Every joke had been a tactical analysis. The laughter hadn't been a sign of humanity's failure to grasp the threat. It had been a sign of humanity's most terrifying capability, the ability to stare into the abyss, laugh at what they saw, and then figure out exactly how to kill it. They called it Operation Silent Night, not because it happened at night. It didn't. But because of what came after, the silence. Reese's squad was running point on what should have been a routine sweep and clear operation. The Zaraki had seeded another batch of their biohorrors in a valley on Mars's terraformed southern hemisphere, and Command wanted them cleaned up before they could establish a proper breeding ground. "Hey, Shade." Quan's voice crackled over the comm with his usual cheer. "What do you call a Zaraki bioweapon that crosses a mountain range?" Reese was already grinning as she checked her sector. "I don't know, Quan." "What?" "A hill pickle with legs." The pain hit before the laughter could fully form. Reese doubled over in her combat suit, a searing agony ripping through her skull like someone had replaced her cerebrospinal fluid with molten metal. Through the haze of pain, she heard similar cries of distress from the rest of the squad, all except Quan. Quan wasn't crying out. Quan was screaming. "Multiple contacts." Rowan's voice cut through the chaos, tight with both pain and professional control. "Some kind of airborne deployment, biological in nature. They're getting in through our suit filters." Reese forced her eyes open, fighting against the agony that threatened to split her head in two. Through her visor, she saw them, microscopic creatures floating in the thin Martian air like malevolent dust motes. They glowed with a sickly bioluminescence that pulsed in sync with each wave of pain. "Neural parasites," their medical officer, Dr. Lang, managed to gasp out between gritted teeth. They're integrating with our nervous systems, targeting the areas associated with... Another joke died in Quan's throat, transforming into a howl of pure agony. He collapsed, his armor system struggling to compensate for his convulsions. "The portions of our brains that process humor," Rowan finished grimly. "They've weaponized laughter itself." A transmission cut through their tactical network, the High Commander's familiar face wearing an expression that might have been a smile if you'd never seen a real one. "Amusing, isn't it?" The artificial translation couldn't quite hide the satisfaction in its voice. "We have studied your species' peculiar response to fear, your tendency to mock that which should terrify you. Now we have turned your defense mechanism against you." Reese tried to respond with one of her usual quips, but the mere thought of humor sent fresh spikes of agony through her skull. Around her, she could see her squad mates struggling with the same horrific realization. Their greatest psychological weapon had been turned against them. "Quan's neural readings are critical," Dr. Lang reported. her voice clinical despite the strain. "The parasites are targeting him more aggressively than the rest of us. They must be detecting his prior patterns of humor use." Reese crawled to Kwan's position, each movement sending fresh waves of pain through her system. Her friend, her squad mate, the man who could find a joke in any situation, lay twitching in his armor, his vitals scrolled across her HUD, each reading worse than the last. "Reese," he managed to gasp out, his voice barely recognizable. "Reese, I can't laugh anymore. I can't even think about—" Another spasm cut him off. The High Commander's transmission continued, its voice dripping with artificial sympathy. "Your species' primitive coping mechanisms are now your weakness. Each attempt at humor, each moment of joy, will bring only pain. Soon you will learn proper respect for your evolutionary superiors." Reese looked around at her squad. Torres was curled into a fetal position, whimpering. Lang was desperately trying to synthesize a countermeasure, her hands shaking as she worked her medical equipment. Rowan stood rigid, every line of his body radiating tension as he fought against the pain. And Kwan's vitals were getting weaker by the second. Something snapped inside Reese then. Not her spirit, something else. Something that had always laughed in the face of danger suddenly went very, very quiet. "Sir," she said to Rowan, her voice flat and controlled in a way that had nothing to do with pain suppression. "Request permission to implement Protocol Omega." Rowan turned to her slowly. Protocol Omega wasn't a real protocol. It was something their squad had joked about during training, a hypothetical response to an impossible situation, the kind of thing you laughed about because it was too terrible to take seriously. No one was laughing now. "Granted," Rowan said after a moment, understanding exactly what she meant. "Dr. Lang, get Kwan stabilized for evac, Torres marking targets. Reese, make them regret this." Reese opened a channel to command as she began the preparations. They had all known this day might come, the day when the jokes stopped working, the day when humanity's laughter finally died. But the Zaraki had made a critical error in their calculations. They thought that taking away humanity's laughter would break them. They didn't understand that underneath the humor, underneath the memes and jokes and seeming frivolity, there was something else, something that didn't need to laugh, something that had been waiting for an excuse. The bunker under Olympus Mons was supposed to be a secret. The Zaraki never figured out why humans had nicknamed it the Comedy Club. Reese stood in the massive underground hangar, staring at the weapon they'd been saving for exactly this kind of situation. The GAU-9 last laugh looked like someone had asked a medieval watcher device to mate with a rotary cannon, then hired an abstract expressionist to handle the aesthetics. Beautiful, isn't it? Dr. Vega, the project lead, ran her hand along the weapon's massive barrel assembly. Her eyes were bloodshot from the neural parasite's effects, but her voice was steady. "We started development the day after first Wartact. While everyone was laughing at their bioweapons, we were studying their acoustic vulnerabilities." The weapon's primary barrel began to spin up, a sound like 1,000 wind-up toys having an argument. Then came the laughter. It started low, a deep mechanical chuckle that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. As the barrels spun faster, the laugh built in intensity, shifting through every register of human amusement. Chortles, giggles, guffaws, all reproduced with perfect mechanical precision at exactly 3,000 rounds per minute. The pain hit Reese immediately, the neural parasites responding to even synthesized humor. But she noticed something else through the agony. The Zaraki bioorganic sensors in the testing chamber were writhing in distress. They designed their weapons to target our brain's humor centers, Morrison explained, wiping blood from her nose. But in doing so, they had to make them exquisitely sensitive to human laughter in all its forms, even artificial ones. Rowan studied the weapon with professional appreciation. How many can we deploy? We've got 20 full units ready now, another 50 in final assembly. Morrison's smile was tight with pain, but genuine. Each one calibrated to a different type of human laughter. This one set to what we call the Sergeant Major, the kind of laugh that makes fresh recruits wish they'd never been born. The next 12 hours were a blur of preparation and pain. Reese's squad was chosen to lead the first counterattack, their combat suits modified to integrate with the GAU-9s. Each step they took in the massive rig sent fresh waves of agony through their neural networks. But nobody complained, nobody joked. They didn't need to anymore. The Zaraki never saw it coming. Reese's unit crested the ridge just as Mars's weak sun was setting, their silhouettes stark against the orange sky. The alien forces had established a forward base in the valley below, their bioorganic structures pulsing with sickly light. Remember, Rowan's voice was tight with controlled pain over the comm. Synchronize your firing patterns. We want overlapping fields of artificial laughter, maximum psychological impact. Reese's hands settled on the GAU-9's controls. The weapon began to spin up, its mechanical laughter building like an approaching storm. Around her, 19 other units joined in, each calibrated to a different laugh. The combined sound was like a comedy club designed by H.R. Giger. The effect on the Zaraki forces was immediate and devastating. Their bioorganic weapons, tuned to detect and punish human humor, went into complete systemic shock. The neural parasites in Reese's head screamed in sympathy, but she ignored the pain. The time for laughter was over. Now was the time for the punchline. 3,000 rounds per minute, each one engineered to exploit the weaknesses they discovered while pretending to just make memes. 3,000 opportunities per minute to show the aliens exactly what humanity was capable of when pushed too far. The High Commander's transmission cut through the cacophony, its artificial voice wavering with what might have been fear. This is impossible. You cannot weaponize joy itself. That's where you made your mistake. Reese responded, her voice cold, despite the agony in her skull. You thought our laughter was just a defense mechanism, just a way to cope with fear. She adjusted her aim, targeting the command center's primary neural cluster. You never understood that human laughter isn't just about joy. Sometimes it's about showing our teeth. The GAU-9s roared their mechanical mirth across the Martian valley, each burst of fire accompanied by a different variety of synthesized human amusement. The Zaraki's bioorganic fortifications began to rupture, their weapons turning against them as the acoustic assault triggered catastrophic feedback loops in their neural networks. And through it all, Reese thought about Quan, still in medical stasis back at base. They'd taken his laughter, tried to use humanity's own joy as a weapon against them, but they'd forgotten something crucial about human nature. We don't just laugh because something is funny. Sometimes we laugh because we're about to show you exactly how unfunny we can be. The formal surrender came 3 days after the Battle of Olympus Mons. The Zaraki High Commander's final transmission was notably devoid of its usual theatrical flourishes. Instead, it simply asked, in terms that suggested genuine bewilderment, "Why are you like this?" Reese stood in the medical bay, watching Quan's neural readings slowly return to normal as the parasites were purged from his system. The counteragent, developed from studying the GAU-9's effects, was working better than expected. Across Earth and its colonies, millions were recovering their ability to laugh. You know what the really funny part is? Quan's voice was weak, but had that familiar hint of mischief. They spent all that time studying human psychology, and they never figured out the most basic thing about us. "What's that?" Reese asked, though she already knew the answer. "We laugh hardest at the things that scare us most." He tried to sit up and Reese helped adjust his pillows. They thought they could use that against us, but all they did was give us a reason to stop laughing and start focusing. The news feeds were full of footage from the surrender ceremonies. The Zaraki diplomats looked thoroughly confused as they signed treaties on tablets displaying looping clips of their own propaganda broadcasts, now with added laugh tracks, of course. "The Laughing Legion," Torres read from his data pad, grinning. "That's what they're calling us now. There's already a movie deal in the works. They want Chris Pratt to play me. As long as they get the important parts right," Rowan said, entering the medical bay. He looked tired, but satisfied, about how humanity's greatest weapon isn't our guns or our ships. Reese nodded, thinking about those final moments of the battle, when the GAU-9's mechanical laughter had echoed across the Martian valleys. "It's our ability to laugh in the face of death, and then," Quan added with a weak but genuine chuckle, "make death laugh back." The neural parasites were being reprogrammed now, transformed into medical tools to help treat PTSD and anxiety. The Zaraki's bioorganic technology was being adapted for peaceful purposes. Even the murder puppy plushies were getting a new production run, though these ones wouldn't try to nest in your walls. Reese looked around at her squad, her family, and felt something bubble up inside her. For the first time in what felt like forever, it didn't hurt. She laughed. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, she liked to imagine the Zaraki were still trying to figure out what was so damn funny.